Hey everybody, it's Alicia and welcome back into my kitchen. My new kitchen and also my new glasses. I always love getting new frames. It's always been a favorite thing of mine to do ever since I was a kid is to go pick out new glasses frames. And these ones, they're black and the frames, the shape of the frames are large round circles. And yeah, everyone says that they look really good on me and I like them, so it's fun to show them off in a video. Well, today's recipe is from the late, great Clara, who was the host of one of my favorite cooking channels, Great Depression Cooking. In the series, she shares a lot of recipes that she and her family ate during the Great Depression. Clara hosted the channel well into her 90s, and God's willing, I'll be doing the same with my channel. Her grandson helped her film the videos, and she's sadly no longer with us, but her legacy lives on in her wonderful recipes. Her poor man's meal, which is a wonderful one-pot meal of sauteed potatoes, onions, hot dogs, and tomato sauce, has become a staple on our kitchen table, and I will definitely be sharing that recipe in a future video. But today's is for a wonderfully simple cake that I made last night when my dad was going to come over for dinner. He called and asked if he could come over that afternoon, and so I was like, oh, I want to have something sweet to offer him when he comes, because that's something that I was always taught as a kid. You always have something sweet to offer your guests, whether it's store-bought or homemade. It's always nice to have a little dessert thing to offer people. And this cake is a wonderful recipe to have in your repertoire, whether you want to make something sweet for yourself or if unexpected guests are going to be dropping by. It's made with cupboard staples, and Clara says that her mother would only make it if she happened to have the ingredients lying around from other recipes, because sweets were a big treat back then, and it was always a big event to have even something as simple as a cake like this one. And this is wonderfully sweet. It's a vanilla cake, and the vanilla flavor is really intense. It almost reminds me of boxed vanilla pudding, that really intense sweet vanilla flavor. And it's made with cupboard staples, and so yeah, you can't go wrong with something that's simple and delicious and made with things you have already laying around the house, most likely, if you're an avid baker like me. And so yeah, let's get started with this wonderful simple cake. And here are the ingredients you will need to make the cake. And no, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. This only has a couple ingredients, 7 to be exact. Well, 7 for the cake, and then 2 more for the topping, but we'll get to that when we get to it. In this bowl, I have 1 stick of softened butter. Over here in all these cups, I have the other ingredients, so here is half a cup of sugar, 3/4 of a cup of flour with 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder mixed into it, 1/4 of a cup of milk, 1 egg, and 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And over here is the pan I'll be baking it in. It's a loaf pan that I greased with butter and then put a piece of buttered parchment paper in it. So I buttered the side of the parchment paper that's going to be touching the batter, because the batter is a very thick batter, as you'll see. Claire's recipe says to just butter the loaf pan and then flour it. I've never been very good at that. People I will see when they flour a pan, it always makes this nice little even dusting of flour. I can never do that. The flour always ends up in just little uneven sprinkles everywhere, so I opted for the parchment paper. The first step is to cream together the butter and sugar. And I've done that, and the mixture is smooth and creamy, and it should be a pale yellow. And if you're going by feel, if you're blind or VI, the mixture, when you stir it, it should feel smooth and there shouldn't be any lumps of butter or any grainy feeling of the sugar on the bottom of the bowl. It should feel all smooth and like one nice, smooth, silky mixture. And the next step will be to add the egg and the 1 teaspoon of vanilla to the sugar and butter mixture. And of course, if you have another extract like almond or lemon, you could switch up the flavor, but the original recipe calls for vanilla and it's delicious, so that's what I'm going to use. But feel free to swap out the flavoring if you like. And here are the wet ingredients all combined. I should note that I beat them in separately, so first I added in the egg and beat that in, and then I poured in the vanilla and beat that in until the mixture was smooth and creamy. And again, if you're just going by feel, it should feel like all one nice, smooth, velvety mixture. And the next step is to fold in the dry ingredients, which again is 3/4 of a cup of flour mixed with 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. This is what the butter and sugar mixture looks like with the flour folded in. It's very thick, and by feel, it also feels very thick, almost like a really thick pancake batter. And the last step to do now is to add in the milk, and then we will have our wonderful cake batter ready. Also, take a shot every time I say wonderful in this video. That's a good drinking game. You know, when you talk off the cuff, sometimes you don't always use different words and the same descriptive word comes up again and again. So yeah, do a shot every time I say wonderful if you want to get drunk really fast while watching this video. And here is our happy, simple cake batter. I switched to using a spatula to fold in the milk because the batter was getting smooth and creamy, and I wanted to make sure that everything was blended in, and I'm going to be using the spatula to scrape the batter into the pan anyway. So yeah, don't be afraid to switch up the tools that you use while you're making something. And here is the batter, and as you can see, it's very smooth, and by feel it feels very smooth and creamy, like a thick vanilla pudding. So with that, now we are transferring it into the prepared loaf pan. And here is the cake batter in the pan. I scraped it in with a spatula and then I smoothed it out with the back of a spoon. That's the easiest method for evening out cake batter for me. I know some people use a spatula, but for me, I find the back of a spoon works best. So yeah, here is the cake in the pan all ready to go into the oven, and I'm going to bake this at 350 degrees for 30 minutes. Clara's recipe says 20 minutes, but when I baked mine yesterday and checked it at the 20-minute mark, it still needed more time. So yeah, I would say 20 to 30 minutes depending on your oven, and check it at maybe the 25-minute mark or 20-minute mark. You know your oven best. And here is the cake just out of the oven. It's a light golden brown, and when I inserted a knife in the middle, it came out clean. So those are the signs you want to look for. And my cake with the parchment paper, it took 35 minutes instead of yesterday's cake. When I baked it without the parchment, it took 30 minutes. So depending on whether or not you line your baking pan with parchment paper, it may take a little longer or might not take as long. But yeah, here is the wonderful, there's another shot. Here is the cake just out of the oven, and now we are going to let this cool completely before we remove it from the pan and add the topping. Here is the cake out of the baking pan. I put it on this cute little red serving plate that has red leaves and flowers and stuff on it. My grandmother got me this little plate. It came in a set of, there's another little plate like this one, and sort of a larger serving plate and some serving bowls. It's just a cute little serviceware set. And now that I live in a bigger apartment, I hope to get some more of these just because it's cute to have serving dishes, and now I have a big enough apartment where I can host dinner parties and stuff. So yeah, here it is on this cute little plate. And the cake's not very big, as you can see. It's not like a tall loaf cake, like a loaf of banana bread or something like that. It's just a thin little cake, which is why it would be perfect for afternoon tea or coffee or a small dinner party. Cute thin little cake. And here in this bowl I have the mix that will go on top, and all this is a mix of half a teaspoon of powdered sugar and 1/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. And if you're not a fan of cinnamon, or if you don't have it on hand, I would suggest maybe go with nutmeg or cocoa powder or cloves or something that would contrast with the intense vanilla flavor of the cake or whatever flavor you put into it. So yeah, all that's left to do now is to sprinkle the powdered sugar and cinnamon on top of the cake. And ta-da! Here is the cake with the cinnamon powdered sugar mixture on top. It was enough to cover the whole cake, even though the amounts of both ingredients weren't even a whole teaspoon. Just goes to show that a little goes a long way. And yeah, this is it. The sweet, simple cake Clara grew up eating during the Great Depression. And shout out to you, Clara, wherever you are. Thanks to you for your wonderful recipes. Thanks to your mom for this particular recipe. Shout out to your grandson, Christopher, who still manages your channel. And shout out to all of you for watching this video. Please go check out Clara's channel if you haven't already, and go buy her cookbook if you're so inclined. I'll leave links to both in the description below. And are you a fan of Clara? Have you encountered her before? I know that her channel has blown up in popularity since 2020, and with everyone wanting to find simple recipes with everything going on. But yeah, let me know if you're a fan of Clara too, and if you've tried any of her recipes, and if you try this one, I hope you enjoy it. My sister and dad and I certainly did last night, obviously, because we ate the whole cake, and I just made a second one right now because that's how yummy it is. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for my next Kitchen Witchy video. And as it says up here on this sign over my stove that my mom got me for Christmas, blessed be.